Hi there, this is Riley Hill, and I'm making a video on peer data. The reason I'm making this video is, though I'm by no means an expert, it's just to show a simple thing that I thought would be simple, that I was having trouble finding much documentation on, and that is just making a monosynth. So in pure data, connecting a MIDI note in to oscillator to control it isn't very hard. It doesn't take that much knowledge of the program to do, but there is a kind of a problem that lots of beginners like me seem to have with it, which I'll explain in a moment. But if you don't understand what's going on in this video or don't recognize what I'm doing, I highly recommend checking out Rafael Hernandez's YouTube channel. That's how I learned it all, and it really just takes a few days to go through it and kind of process all the information. Anyway, here we go. I'll get to the point here. Going through the plugin I have here, or the patch I have here. This is I'll just zoom in a bit. Here we have a note in, which takes MIDI data from your MIDI keyboard. If you gotta make sure in your MIDI settings, I have just an M Audio Axiom keyboard hooked up. So just make sure you do that. You can always make a number atom with Command 3 and plug it in just to make sure you are getting MIDI data for debugging or troubleshooting, whatever. So anyway, so here's a note in. The note number is going into MTOF, which changes the MIDI note data into a frequency that will control an oscillator. Then the signal is passing into a signal multiplier that's attached to a line for the velocity. The line just ramps the volume over 50 milliseconds here so that it won't click when it changes velocities. This divide signal by 100 is just to dampen the volume a bit, and this output object is an abstraction that someone's made that's just a combination of a DAC and a DSP control and a volume. It's just a little simpler than using DAC. So you would think that this makes sense. So you'd think if you turn it on, I have to lock the patcher. Turn on the DSP, turn up the volume a bit, play a note, and there you go. It is working. But now, if I try and play a scale or something quickly, you hear that it jumps all over the place like that, and it doesn't sound proper. And that's the thing that kind of confused me. So what the problem is that there's no MIDI data for specifically for note off. When a keyboard sends MIDI off data or a note off data, it's actually sending the last note you played with a 0 velocity. So pure data doesn't have a simple built-in way to process that. So this is why when you play it, it just bounces all over the place and sounds all weird like that. So the solution to this is simple, but it also kind of requires a bit of thinking. I certainly didn't think of it myself. I can post a link to the patch that I found after a while that describes this simply. So the problem is there's a lot of people who are very talented with pure data. There's a lot of people who've built great synths, but it's just kind of hard I just found it hard to find this specific little pointer. So first thing you got to do, or first thing I'll show here, is making a strip note, which you do need for this, even though it might not make a lot of sense. But I'll attach these. What strip note does is it takes your velocity in from your note in, it takes your note and your velocity from your note in, and it strips it of all the zero values. So you're still getting velocity information, but no note offs. And now I can do runs like that without it bouncing all over the place, but now it doesn't turn off. So that's not the solution. I'm going to keep this here, but I'll get rid of that. So over here, I have this string of objects built up, and this is what we're going to use. So I'll explain how it works. The basic principle is that you want to store your note data and compare it against each other so that the select on the bottom right there will actually match the last note you play with the zero note, so that it won't send zero notes for notes that aren't the last note that you play. I don't know if I explained that perfectly, but you'll see when I start patching stuff how it works. So I will send the velocity into the cold outlet of the float. So now when I click a note, it's going to be sending the velocity into the float and storing it. And when the float receives a bang, it'll send the stored number to select. If select equals 0, it'll pass it to here. If it doesn't equal 0, it'll send a bang, or it'll send the data here. So it'll send the float that came into here, which is how we're going to get our normal non-zero velocities. Now, if if it's equal to 0, the select sends a bang to this float, which is going to be storing the note data from the note in. So what this is a trigger, a bang, and a float. That'll make sure that this data is sent out in the right order, so that the patch can process it in the correct order, which is, when you're working with audio, obviously everything needs to be perfectly in order, or it's not going to work the way you expect it to. This is almost ready set up, but this selector here this select object here is where we actually compare the non-zero note and the zero note against each other to make sure that they're the same at the same time, which is when we actually want, when there's no more notes being inputted, that's when we actually want it to be like, hey, this is the right info, or this is the right data. Now pass the 0 through. So select the strip note out and attach it to the select. And the select, when this is true, so when this statement is true, when the data coming from this float and the data coming from the strip note are the same, that is when a bang is passed to a 0. And the 0, this number here, the 0 and the 50, that's for the line. So it's going to pass. 0 is the velocity, the number, and 50 is the ramp speed for the line, because that's how a line takes two values. This number here is whatever number is coming out of here. That's what this symbol is for. Whatever number is coming out of here, and the 50 is the ramp time. So if we connect this to here, and turn down the volume just to be safe, should work. now I can actually play without the notes getting cut off. And that's how that works. So it's not exactly simple. It's simple devices arranged in a really, or simple objects arranged in a very complex way. Or to me anyway, as a beginner, it seems very complex. But yeah, hope that helped you out.